As her relationship with Malcolm deepened, Mandy's hopes for a bright future began to fade. Though she tried to stay positive, a growing unease took hold, especially as Malcolm distanced her from friends and family. When Mandy discovered she was pregnant, everything changed. The young waitress felt trapped in a situation beyond her control. Malcolm, enraged by the news, turned cold and withdrawn. Although he'd been charming at first, Malcolm had no desire to be a father again, especially not to a child that might jeopardize his standing in the community. The complicated love triangle stirred powerful emotions in everyone involved. Mandy felt scared and uncertain about her future with a baby on the way, while Malcolm grappled with the consequences of his actions and the possible fallout. For Cindy, Malcolm's wife, the affair and Mandy's pregnancy were a painful betrayal. She had endured years of Malcolm's controlling behavior, but the thought of him having a child with someone close to their son Tyler's age was unbearable. In the days before his death, Malcolm's composed exterior began to fracture under the pressure. The strain of the situation was evident, and each person involved in this tangled relationship sensed that something drastic was imminent. On the morning of June 28, 2009, Sheriff Malcolm Cotton Gaines was found dead in his home. Around 8:15 a.m., his longtime neighbor, Harold Jenkins, sensed something was amiss. A retired postal worker, Harold was outside collecting his newspaper when he noticed Malcolm's front door slightly open. This was unusual, as Malcolm, being the sheriff, was typically very security conscious. Concerned, Harold decided to check on him. Inside, Harold immediately noticed signs of a struggle, cushions scattered across the living room and a broken vase on the floor. His heart raced as he moved toward the master bedroom, calling out for Malcolm. Receiving no answer, he froze when he reached the doorway. Malcolm's lifeless body lay on the bedroom floor, surrounded by blood. He had been shot multiple times, with blood spatter across the walls. The horrifying scene was unlike anything Harold had ever seen. Shaking, he backed out of the house and called 911. "There's been a murder," he told the dispatcher, his voice barely steady. Within minutes, emergency responders were on the way. When police arrived, they found Harold outside, pale and visibly shaken. He recounted what he had seen, and officers quickly entered the house. The scene inside was chaotic and violent, suggesting an intense confrontation. Malcolm had been shot in the head, chest, and genital area. His service revolver, used in the murder, lay nearby. Furniture was overturned and glass was shattered, yet nothing appeared stolen, leading investigators to suspect this was a personal attack rather than a random crime. Detective Maria Tillman, a 15-year veteran with the Monroe Police Department, led the investigation. Known for her no-nonsense approach, she began a thorough assessment of the scene. The details were chilling. Malcolm had been shot 3 times, once in the head, once in the chest, and once in the genital area. The targeted nature of the injuries suggested a calculated murder. As the investigation unfolded, the small town of Monroe was on the verge of discovering that their respected sheriff had been hiding far more than anyone could have imagined. The gunshot wound to Malcolm's genitals was particularly shocking, leading Detective Tillman and her team to suspect it was intentional. Perhaps an act of rage or revenge, hinting at a deeply personal motive. It wasn't just about ending his life, Tillman would later say. This was about making a statement. The fact that his own service revolver was used in the murder indicated the killer might have been close to Malcolm, familiar with his habits and his environment. The forensic team meticulously documented the blood spatter on the bedroom walls, collected evidence from the broken vase, and surveyed the overturned furniture. With no sign of forced entry, detectives concluded Malcolm likely knew his attacker and had willingly let them inside. This detail, coupled with the targeted gunshot wound, suggested emotions of anger, jealousy, or betrayal were behind the crime. By the afternoon, police had reconstructed a rough timeline. Malcolm was likely attacked late at night or in the early morning hours. The nature of his injuries, lack of stolen items, and general state of the house confirmed this was no robbery. It was a premeditated killing with a personal motive. The investigators, led by Detective Tillman, now focused on finding anyone who might have wanted Malcolm dead. As they gathered evidence, they prepared to question those closest to him, knowing that secrets would not stay hidden for long in a small town like Monroe. Cindy Gaines, Malcolm's wife of 20 years, was among the first questioned by police. When she sat with Detective Tillman on the evening of June 28, 2009, her calm demeanor belied years of hardship and betrayal. Cindy revealed her marriage had been troubled for years and that she had long suspected Malcolm of infidelity. "I just knew," she said to the detective. "There were too many signs." She described finding clues in their shared SUV, stray hair clips, unfamiliar perfume scents. Her suspicions were confirmed when she found a phone under the passenger seat, followed by used condoms hidden in the glove compartment. Each discovery left Cindy certain that Malcolm was unfaithful. The confirmation of his affair came in the most humiliating way 4 months before his murder. Cindy returned home early one day from her job as a schoolteacher and walked in on Malcolm with Mandy Brooks, a 19-year-old waitress from the local diner, on their living room couch. "I was frozen," Cindy recalled, "seeing my husband with someone young enough to be our son's age." She immediately confronted Malcolm, but he brushed it off, claiming it meant nothing. Cindy remembered how hurtful it was as she spoke to police, her voice wavering. "He told me it was just physical, but it meant everything to me," she said. Soon after, Cindy learned Mandy was pregnant with Malcolm's child. She overheard a late-night phone conversation between the two discussing the pregnancy. Shocked and devastated, she struggled to comprehend that not only had her husband been unfaithful, but he was also expecting a child with someone else. Cindy had endured so much over the years, but this was the final straw. Her sense of betrayal reached a breaking point, and she admitted to police that she wanted her marriage and her misery to end. Though her words were intense, Cindy maintained her composure during questioning and insisted she hadn't killed Malcolm. However, police still considered her a primary suspect, aware that her long-standing anger and heartbreak provided a clear motive. Meanwhile, Mandy Brooks, the young waitress, was pulled into this complex web by her relationship with Malcolm. When questioned by police, Mandy recounted how Malcolm had lured her in with promises of a better life, far beyond what she'd known. Raised in a small town as the daughter of a felon, Mandy had high hopes, but limited means. After dropping out of school, she was working long hours at the local diner, scraping by. Malcolm had promised her stability, saying he'd take care of her, buy her a house, and even take her on vacations. He once mentioned a trip to Dollywood in Tennessee, which seemed like a dream to Mandy, who had never left Louisiana. But things took a turn when Mandy discovered she was pregnant in late April 2009. After weeks of feeling sick, she took a pregnancy test, and the positive result left her stunned. "I was terrified," she told police. She hadn't planned on having a child, especially not with Malcolm. While she had hoped Malcolm would keep his promises and support her and the baby, she sensed he was beginning to pull away. His promises started to feel hollow, and she feared he might abandon her now that she was pregnant. Her fears escalated when Cindy confronted her one afternoon. Mandy described how Cindy showed up at her apartment holding a steak knife shortly after learning of the pregnancy. "She knew everything," Mandy recalled, "and she threatened me." Cindy accused Mandy of ruining her marriage and demanded to know if the pregnancy was real. Mandy, frightened, admitted the truth. "I didn't know what she would do," she told police. Mandy felt guilty, ashamed, and caught in a love triangle that was quickly spiraling beyond her control dot. Although Mandy wished she could escape her entanglement with Malcolm, she never intended for things to become violent. Her fear and vulnerability made her a person of interest, but she insisted she didn't have the strength or anger needed to harm him. Nonetheless, her involvement in the affair and her pregnancy meant she was closely linked to the investigation, and detectives saw her as a critical figure in uncovering the truth. The case took a surprising turn when detectives probed further into Malcolm's relationship with Mandy. During a particularly intense interview, Mandy broke down and shared disturbing details of Malcolm's manipulation over her life. It wasn't just his promises of a home or vacations that had kept her bound to him. He had gone much further. Mandy revealed that Malcolm had used his position as sheriff to threaten her mother, who was currently serving time for drug-related charges. Malcolm had allegedly warned Mandy that if she tried to leave him or expose the pregnancy, he would use his influence to ensure her mother faced abuse in prison. This left Mandy feeling trapped and completely under his control.
The detectives were appalled, realizing this was more than a simple affair spiraling out of control. It was an abuse of power that left Mandy frightened and desperate. One officer later described Malcolm's actions as a vile abuse of trust and authority. But Mandy had more to reveal. She had previously dated Malcolm's son, Tyler, before her relationship with Malcolm began. Tyler and Mandy had ended things just a few months before she got involved with his father, and Tyler had no idea that his father had started seeing her. This revelation added another layer to the case. Tyler had confronted Malcolm about the affair, though at the time he hadn't known about Mandy's pregnancy. With this new information, detectives began considering if Tyler might be involved in the murder or if Mandy's actions had been motivated by her fear of Malcolm. The detectives were now working with a complex set of relationships and motivations, darker and more twisted than they had initially imagined. Tyler Gaines, then 21, was known around town as a bit of a troublemaker. People described him as quick-tempered, with a reputation for being unfaithful. His relationship with Mandy had been turbulent, and it eventually ended when Mandy could no longer tolerate his infidelities. Friends of Mandy recalled how hurt she was when she discovered Tyler had been seeing other women behind her back. Tyler also had a history of violent behavior, especially in his personal relationships. During questioning, Mandy made a painful confession. She had previously been pregnant with Tyler's child, but he had abused her, leading to multiple miscarriages. This revelation shocked investigators, adding another tragic element to Mandy's story. When Tyler found out that Mandy was now carrying his father's child, his anger only grew. He felt betrayed, not just by Mandy but by his own father, who had crossed an unthinkable line. Friends recalled that after hearing rumors about Mandy's pregnancy, Tyler was seen storming out of a bar, visibly upset and muttering about taking care of it. During his police interrogation, Tyler's anger and frustration were apparent. Officers described him as volatile, struggling to control his emotions. He denied any involvement in his father's death, but his hostility toward both Malcolm and Mandy was unmistakable. Despite the lack of direct evidence linking him to the crime, detectives couldn't ignore his motive. Tyler had every reason to be furious. His father had betrayed him in the worst way possible, and Mandy's pregnancy was a painful reminder of his humiliation. But Tyler insisted that he had no involvement in the crime. Then, on the night of June 23, 2009, Cindy Gaines, Malcolm's wife, reached her breaking point. After years of suspicion, betrayal, and humiliation, she could no longer bear the lies and deceit. Malcolm's affair with Mandy and the news that Mandy was carrying his child were more than Cindy could take. For months, Cindy had been holding in her anger, and now it was boiling over. Trapped in her marriage and disgusted by the man she once loved, she decided she had endured enough. That night, Cindy confronted Malcolm in their living room. Their argument began like many others, but this time, Cindy was prepared. As Malcolm tried to dismiss her concerns, she retrieved the gun he kept hidden in the closet. With trembling hands, she made a decision that would forever change her life and shatter the facade of her marriage. With her heart pounding and a cold, determined rage, Cindy aimed the gun at her husband. She fired a single shot, striking Malcolm in the groin. Detectives would later theorize that the placement of the wound was no accident. It was a symbolic act, representing his betrayal of their marriage. Malcolm collapsed, bleeding heavily, and Cindy stood over him, watching as the man she'd spent so many years with lay dying at her feet. A whirlwind of emotions washed over her: relief, guilt, anger, and fear. She felt justified, believing Malcolm had earned this end after all he'd put her through. But a creeping dread soon followed. What had she done? Desperate, Cindy attempted to stage the scene, dragging Malcolm's body toward the garage to make it look like a botched robbery. However, when detectives arrived, they quickly noticed flaws in her story, and forensic evidence pointed back to Cindy as the prime suspect. The gun used in the murder was Malcolm's own, and there were no signs of forced entry. Under intense questioning, Cindy eventually broke down, confessing to the crime. The reality of her actions hit hard as she was handcuffed, a mixture of resignation and sorrow settling over her. What she had thought would bring her peace left her facing the cold reality of life behind bars. In January 2011, Cindy Gaines went to trial for the murder of her husband, Sheriff Malcolm Gaines. The courtroom was packed with family, friends, and members of the Monroe, Louisiana community who were eager to witness the outcome. Cindy's attorney, Lisa Carlo Beans, argued that Cindy had been pushed to this breaking point by years of emotional abuse and betrayal, portraying her as a wife driven to desperation. The defense claimed that Malcolm's affair with 19-year-old Mandy Brooks, as well as Cindy's discovery of evidence like used condoms and women's underwear in their car, had pushed her over the edge. Carlo Beans painted Cindy as a woman who had reached her limit, suggesting that Malcolm's reckless behavior had set off the tragic events leading to his death. However, prosecutor Richard Duke McDougal presented a different picture, asserting that Cindy's actions were premeditated. He argued that she had confronted Malcolm about his affairs multiple times, fully aware of the consequences when she shot him. He highlighted the brutality of the crime scene, emphasizing the emotional impact on the community. As the trial continued, Cindy's family attended each session, hoping for a positive outcome. Cindy outwardly remained calm, though internally she felt a storm of anxiety, fearing the prospect of many years in prison. Community sentiment was divided. Some felt sympathy for her plight, while others viewed her as a murderer. After days of testimony, the jury returned with a verdict on January 21, 2011. Cindy was found guilty of second-degree murder. The decision hit her hard, and the emotional toll of the trial and verdict was crushing. She had hoped for leniency, believing her circumstances might lessen her sentence, but instead, she faced a long prison term. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison, a sentence that devastated her. Tears streamed down her face as she realized she'd be separated from her children for years. The verdict shook the Gaines family. Once respected in the community, as friends and family grappled with reconciling the woman they knew with her actions. Cindy's trial and sentencing underscored the painful consequences of infidelity and emotional turmoil, leaving a lasting impact on everyone involved. With Cindy Gaines sentenced to 25 years, the lives of those connected to her took drastic turns. She was sent to the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women in St. Gabriel, where she faced the stark reality of prison life. Days were spent in solitude, reflecting on the choices that had led to this tragic act. The guilt weighed heavily, knowing her actions had shattered her family and hurt the Monroe community. Cindy's children were left to navigate life without her, while she struggled to find purpose within the prison walls. Meanwhile, the aftermath of the trial brought unexpected changes for Mandy Brooks and Tyler Gaines, Malcolm's son. Tyler, who had previously dated Mandy before her affair with his father, reached out to her following the trial. Known for his rebellious nature, Tyler had strong feelings for Mandy that remained even through the tumultuous events. They shared a bond from their troubled pasts and were both working to move forward. By early 2011, a few months after the trial, Tyler and Mandy rekindled their relationship. They began seeing each other more frequently, meeting in local coffee shops and parks around Monroe. Slowly, they found comfort in one another. Tyler, who had been known for his past volatility, was making strides to change, attending therapy sessions to work on his anger issues and trying to become a better partner. By the summer of 2012, Tyler and Mandy took their relationship to the next level, announcing their engagement at a small family gathering. The couple married later that year in a modest ceremony at a local park, surrounded by close family and friends. For both of them, it was a chance to rebuild a new life together, free from the shadows of the past. As for Cindy, her time in prison was marked by a struggle for redemption. She took part in therapy programs and worked hard to reconnect with her children, hoping to one day mend the family her actions had torn apart. During her time in prison, Cindy's hope to reconnect with her children remained strong. Although her actions had caused deep emotional wounds, she held on to the belief that, in time, she might earn back their trust and re-enter their lives. Meanwhile, the lives of Cindy, Mandy, and Tyler showed just how complex love, betrayal, and the far-reaching effects of desperate choices can be. Each was trying to find their path forward, forever changed by the tragic events that had redefined their lives. A sheriff, a scandal, a murder. Malcolm Gaines's story stands as a stark reminder that power, when abused, can leave a trail of destruction in its wake. This has been True Crime Tales.